Tonight, President Trump took part in another holiday tradition today by pardoning the lucky turkeys, peas and carrots. That's their name, peas and carrots. Here's a look back at some of the best presidential poultry pardons.
Peas, I hereby grant you a full pardon. You don't have to touch it. Wow.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, everybody.
This is the most well-behaved turkey.
Where's the children?
So you could just, whoops.
It is quite something every year in the Rose Garden. Thanks for inviting us into your home tonight. That's it for this special report. Fair, balanced, and unafraid. The story hosted by Martha MacCallum starts right now. Martha.
Thank you, Brett. Always an interesting moment there at the White House. And tonight, on that theme, the president pardons the turkey, but says that they may not be so lucky in the future.
Even though peas and carrots have received a presidential pardon, I have warned them that House Democrats are likely to issue them both subpoenas.
That's a pretty good line as he leaves for Thanksgiving with a full plate, giving reporters quite a bit to chew on his way out the door. The plunging market, the changing rules on asylum at the border, talking about the Ninth Circuit, calling it patently unfair. He also said the troops are proud to be on the border for Thanksgiving, despite some of the misgivings that people have had, and also that Saudi Arabia is a partner we need.
They're buying hundreds of billions of dollars worth of things from this country. I'm not going to destroy the world economy, and I'm not going to destroy the economy for our country by being foolish with Saudi Arabia.
Do you agree with Larry Kudlow that we're not headed to a recession?
No, I think we're doing great. I mean, as a country, we're doing great.
Our asylum policy has been put on hold.
Well, you go to the Ninth Circuit, and it's a disgrace. People should not be allowed to immediately run to this very friendly circuit and file their case. It's a disgrace what happens with the Ninth Circuit. We will win that case in the Supreme Court. Oh, you don't worry about the Thanksgiving. These are tough people. They know what they're doing, and they're great, and they've done a great job. You're so worried about the Thanksgiving holiday for them. They are so proud to be representing our country. The written answers to the witch hunt that's been going on forever. No collusion, no nothing. They've been finished. Finished them yesterday. The lawyers have them. I assume they'll turn them in today or soon. Ivanka can handle herself. These are all in the historical records. There was no deletion whatsoever, unlike Hillary Clinton, who deleted 33,000 emails. Unlike Hillary Clinton, who had a server in the basement, Ivanka didn't.
Obviously, I can assume who you think deserves to be first place. Who do you think deserves to be second place?
I can't imagine anybody else other than Trump. Can you imagine anybody other than Trump? Huh? Have a good time, everybody. Thank you.
Can you imagine? All right, tonight, the best of the Wall Street Journal editorial board weighs in. Bill McGurn, Dan Henninger, and Mary O'Grady join me now. Great to have all of you with us. So there's a lot there that the president put out on the plate. Mary, let me start with you. With regard to Khashoggi, the president basically said, we cannot change this relationship based on this horrific act. And the CIA saying that they do believe that the prince knew about this.
Yeah, how unfortunate that he's focusing on the sale of weapons as if, the economics of it is the primary importance. Really what matters is the relationship we have with Saudi Arabia is very important. I mean, they are a counterbalance in the Middle East to, some of our biggest enemies, and we need to maintain that relationship. But the importance of maintaining the relationship is not the money we're making off of selling arms. And I think if he had expressed that a little bit differently, people would understand.
Yeah, I mean, it seems, Dan, that relationships with Middle East countries is often a choice of the least worst option of the people that you can align yourself with.
Yeah, that's true. But I think all presidents have to acknowledge that America has a unique role in the world and represents certain values and norms that we have to uphold. One thinks of Ronald Reagan's policy towards the Soviet Union and communism, an utterly hard-nosed policy, but it was partnered with a sense of American idealism. And I think the president here, President Trump, runs the risk of isolating himself and trying to pursue a difficult foreign policy agenda. Very few members of Congress are going to be able to ally themselves with a kind of statement that he issued on Saudi Arabia today.
Let's take a look at Mitt Romney's statement, sort of maybe showing his hand a little bit of the kind of Mitt Romney that we will see and hear from as he becomes a senator. The President and Secretary of State's Khashoggi statements to date are inconsistent with an enduring foreign policy, international interest, with basic human rights, and with American greatness, he says, Bill.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't have worded it as Mary says the way he did based on our economic interests. It is an interest. We have more interest in the Middle East against Iran. And look, the man was brutally murdered. It's unforgivable, with some knowledge at the top, whether it was the Crown Prince or not. We don't know for certain. And it's going to be a long road back for them. But we do need them in the region. And I think we should point out that some of the people that are pushing on the other side, Iran got rid of an FBI agent, murdered an FBI agent, right? Has put IEDs out there that blow up American servicemen. I mean, Erdogan has put a lot of people in jail and so forth. So there are a lot of bad people out there. And they have to, I think what we need is a Nixon moment, which we had after Tiananmen Square when President Nixon went over to China and said, you guys screwed up badly. And they took it because he was a friend. There's got to be a former ambassador or a national security advisor or something that they trust to tell them, you can't keep coming up with these cockamamie excuses.
All right. With regard to some of these other stories that he just sort of brushed across there, Ivanka's emails sort of gives us an indication of the many different places that Democrats are likely to go as they start to plumb through these investigations. Your reaction to that one, Mary?
I think that one is sort of a non-event. I mean, I think it's a good talking point, and of course she's a good target for President Trump's adversaries. But, you know, basically she turned over the emails, and, you know, he sort of invited trouble by putting her in a position in the White House. But I don't think it's that big a deal. I really think that one's going to sort of go by the by.
What about the asylum situation and what he said about the Ninth Circuit Court?
I think the president has a point there, that people do run to the Ninth Circuit with these things, and they're talking about this court overturning his asylum ban. It wasn't really a ban, Martha. What he was saying is that they have to come through ports of entry into the United States rather than simply coming across the border illegally. And yet you've got the Democrats, ACLU, running to the courts when they have no alternative or no plan B for what we're supposed to do with these people coming towards the U.S. border. So it defaults to the president to have to deal with this. Now, of course, we're going to litigate it. So I think the president is on pretty firm ground.
Is on good ground there. Yeah. With regard to another story that popped up this afternoon, Marcia Fudge, who was really the only specific person, Bill, who had put her name out there, said, I'm going to think about it over Thanksgiving. I don't know what happened behind closed doors, but now she has decided that she is not going to challenge Nancy Pelosi. Do you think they made some kind of deal?
Look, I always thought Nancy Pelosi was going to win this with experience. She didn't get to the top by being weak. And the problem they had is they never had someone in the first place. What the Democrats wanted to do was have her step down and then they would go in. But it tells you that they're afraid of her to go through. So what she was going to do is look at how many votes she needed, whip the count, find out how many votes she was short, and then make whatever deal she needed to make. What's interesting is about the latest objections, most of the people in the beginning that said, I'm not going to support her for speaker, were people like Connor Lamb from Pennsylvania campaigning as a moderate. But some of the complaints are now coming from the Democratic left about Mrs. Pelosi. So it'll be interesting. But I think if I had to bet my house, I would bet it on Mrs. Pelosi.
Yeah. Another story that broke late in the day was this suggestion that the president had floated the idea with Don McGahn that he wanted to prosecute Hillary Clinton and James Comey. What do you think about that, Mary?
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't think we really know what's gone on there, but I think it would be sort of red meat for his adversaries if he tries to do that. So I don't know. I think, again, it's kind of I think right now what's happening is both sides are sort of staking out their territory. And, you know, there's a question about whether they're going to be able to work together. And I think if the Democrats decide that this is going to be all-out war, we're not going to let him achieve anything, I think that is going to be a tactical and a strategic error on their part, because people elected them They don't like Donald Trump. I agree with that. But they really want some answers on things like health care and the stagnation of wages, which is partly caused by the high cost of health care. And I think also the immigration problem.
Quick thought on the Mueller handwritten questions. The president says it's done. It was easy for me. I had no problem answering those questions. There's no collusion.
Yeah, and I think that's probably right, that there is no collusion. Yet, recall that last week, the president, in a tweet storm, attacked, really assaulted Robert Mueller and his investigation. I think that kind of puts pressure on Mueller to sort of come up with something other than try to withdrawing from this, as many people think they should, wind it down. But the president is now talking about prosecuting James Comey or prosecuting Hillary Clinton. I think the country has prosecution fatigue at this point. Right. It would be just as well if the president would step back, let Mueller produce his report. If there's nothing there, then the public will see that, and let's move on to, as Mary suggests, getting something done rather than just investigating.
Right there. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Thank you very much. Great to see you, as always. So next, the debate over where the economy will go from here, with the Dow erasing all of its gains for 2018, but the president's top economic advisor says he's not buying it.
I think we're doing great. I mean, as a country, we're doing great. Our unemployment is at a record low. You look at all of the different statistics. I think your tech stocks have some problems, but that'll come back. But no, I think we're going to do very well.
It's a very strong economy. The economy, the basic economy, has reawakened, and it's going to stay there. I mean, I'm reading some of the weirdest stuff, how recession is around the corner. Nonsense. My personal view, our administration's view, recession is so far in the distance, I can't see it.
That was White House Chief Economic Advisor Larry Kudlow trying to calm some of the nation's jitters today as the Dow plunged more than 550 points. And with that, went all of the gains for 2018, just like the S&P 500. Now, stocks are still up remarkably since President Trump was first elected. But now real concerns mount over the Trump economy and the possibility of a trade war with China. Here now, Dr. Art Laffer, who served on President Ronald Reagan's Economic Policy Advisory Board, also an economic advisor to the Trump campaign and author of Trumponomics, so he's a fan of the program, and Austin Goolsbee, President Obama's former chief economist. Welcome, gentlemen. Good to have both of you with us today. So, you look at some of these numbers. The Dow is up more than 6,000 points since President Trump was elected. The GDP is very strong, up 3.5% and 4.2% in the last quarters. And yet, Austin, let me start with you. You do see this weakness in the market, largely led by tech stocks, which a lot of people think were quite overvalued.
Well, wait a minute. The main thing driving, there may be overvalue in the stock market, but the main thing driving the market into the ground is fear that Donald Trump is starting a trade war between the two biggest economies of the world. Art and I are old friends, and while we disagree on many things, we are going to 100% agree that a trade war and tariffs are not a good idea.
All right.
He's completely correct. By the way, old friends. I'm old. He's young. But we both University of Chicago, both Yale, we share a lot of background, Austin and I do. And I agree with him totally. A trade war is not good for the economy. In fact, it's really horrible. But I do think the other policies in this administration are great, and I think trade will turn out to be good. The tax cuts are the best I've seen in first term of any president. The deregulation is phenomenal. I think Powell at the Fed is doing a great job. And
some people think he's raised interest rates too much, and that's one of the problems that you're seeing here. So you're seeing a flight into the fixed income market and out of stocks because people think that's a better investment at this point.
No, you've got to have the market rate set by the market, not by some Fed chairman, frankly. And at 20% interest rates, which we had when we came into office, that's way too high. It killed the housing market. When the rates are too low, it kills the funds going into the housing market. We had the 8 worst years in new housing starts per 10,000 population in the last 8 years. It was just terrible. And we need to have markets rates set by the market, not by the Fed. And I think that's a great move, what Powell is doing, moving them back up to normal. That's the way it should be done. But the rest of the policies, I mean, Martha, seriously, there's nothing out there that I see that would cause this economy to move into a recession or a depression or anything else. I think Larry Kudlow's exactly correct on this, and I just hope the trade stuff moves faster and we get a free trade deal right away. I mean, the president's told me personally he doesn't want to use tariffs. That's the only leverage he has to get them to negotiate and cut tariffs and cut barriers. But Austin's completely correct. A trade war would be catastrophic.
All right. So if there's a solution that relieves the trade war concern, Austin, do the fundamentals still look good to you here?
Well, look, I hope that the market would return, but I don't know. You know, I would say this is the caution. It was on this program, Martha, and I told you when Donald Trump earlier in the year got up to brag about how much the stock market was up. I said that is a very risky thing to do, because if you accept the judgment of the stock market in the positive, then you have to accept the judgment in the negative. The tax cut has been in place starting January 1, 2018. The stock market is down since the tax cut came into effect. And I think they better pay attention and stop bragging about that.
You got enormous consumer confidence numbers. You have more people entering the workforce. You know, when you look, I've got a list of really positive overall environmental economic figures here. Art, I'm going to give you the last word.
Well, the last word is the market's been flat. But this is exactly what happened to the Reagan situation. We had the market trough just before the boom of '83. And that's what I expect will happen here on 2019 when all of this starts steeping and coming to fruition. I think you're going to see a very good economy for a long period of time, and I'm very excited with the numbers that are showing now.
We will see who's right. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Awesome.
Great to see both of you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha.
So it is an all too familiar story of he said, she said, and there are rarely any winners. Now, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos is trying to restore due process to American campuses. Up next, a parent whose son was accused of rape. And
former Democratic operative, and you're talking about deposing the president. That sounds political.
No, it sounds righteous.
How so?
Because my client is credible. She's telling the truth.
My understanding is that Dr. Ford has already passed a lie detector test. There's no need to go forward with this nomination at this stage.
I don't think there's anything wrong with calling out people that look like me for not doing enough to defend women and minorities and people of color, and I'm going to continue to do that.
But now that Avenatti has been accused himself of domestic violence, he is a big fan of due process for both sides. Women, including his ex-wife, have come to his defense, who apparently in this case do not #believe survivors. This is the problem with blanket statements. Each of these cases are individual. Each circumstance is unique, and each needs to be treated as such. Each accuser and accused deserves to have the opportunity to tell their side of the story. That is how our system of justice works in this country. Now, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos is demanding, after a year of studying how these cases have been handled on college campuses across this country, under strict rules that were imposed on them by the Obama administration, that there was a lack of justice in the way they were often carried out. In many cases, young men were rightfully punished and kicked out of school, and the women who accused them were vindicated. In others, though, young men were kicked out after a sham hearing in which they were not even allowed to see the evidence against them. In some cases, they were not permitted to have a lawyer present with them during the proceedings, while they were interrogated by a panel of 3 professors who were chosen by the school. Corey Mock's father knows that situation all too well because it happened to his son. C.D. Mock, welcome. Good to have you here tonight, sir.
Hi, Martha. Glad to be back with you again.
I mean, this is a story that I know left a deep mark on your life. Your son was accused of rape. Then he was exonerated by his school. Then they said, no, wait a minute. We think this did actually happen. It was a torturous process that he was eventually found to be free of, and that he was not found guilty of. The woman who accused him still stands by her accusation. What was wrong with the process that you saw?
Well, we actually had a much better situation than a lot of these families today. We actually were afforded some due process at my son's school. The problem was the push from the Obama administration, pushing the schools to find these young men guilty or responsible and get them off campus. And they weaponized the schools to do this by threatening to take away their federal funding if they didn't. And that was the big problem in our case, and remains a problem today.
Yeah.
You know, what we're hoping with these new rules is, and we're cautiously optimistic, that the days of the kangaroo courts in our colleges is gone, hopefully, and that these colleges will stop railroading young men and not affording them any due process whatsoever and calling them guilty upon accusation.
You know, there was a push, as we say, under these new rules that went into effect in the Obama administration. There was all this discussion of rape culture and how there was rape culture across the country and that it was almost epidemic, and that the only way to stop it was to make sure that if someone was accused, that they were basically, in many cases, almost immediately removed from campus. And that's how the schools showed that they were taking it genuinely seriously, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And those, it amazes me, those statistics are still being used today by people who want to perpetuate this for reasons which it amazes me. I just don't understand it at all. But that's pretty much been the case. I mean, you know, there was a problem, and the problem was there were situations and instances where young women were getting sexually assaulted, and maybe it was a high-profile athlete or someone like that at a college campus, and it got pushed under the rug, and certainly that's happened. The response was to create an imaginary epidemic, an imaginary crisis that existed where statistics of 1 in 5 and 1 in 4 women in college are being sexually assaulted, which are just, it's lunacy. And yet, you know, the Obama administration, for some reason, latched on to this, and that was the point of them perpetuating this farce and creating these rules.
And the great tragedy in this is, as you say, that the cases that are genuine and that need to be resolved and where people need to be punished for their behavior get lost in sort of the shuffle of this, and that there's not a good enough process where both sides feel that they're heard and that the truth can will out in the end. CD Mock, thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Final thought. And I got to go.
Well, just say that, you know, there are women that men rape women and women lie about men, and people are people, and we just need to make sure that we've got a good rule of law in our due process to make sure that people who are innocent are not deemed to be guilty before they're proven guilty.
Mr. Mock, thank you very much. Good to talk to you tonight. Thanks for being here. Important topic.
Appreciate it.
You bet. So coming up next, the real-life tragedies playing out in California tonight as the wildfires continue to burn out of control, including the story of one high school football team where nearly every player, 105 players, lost their family homes. For heavy rains in the wake of the Camp Fire, the deadliest, most destructive wildfire in California history. So far, nearly 13,000 homes are destroyed as we head into Thanksgiving weekend. 79 people are dead, and thousands of families are homeless. Take a look at the before on the left of Paradise, and on the right, the after. And now take a look at the neighborhoods on the ground. At Paradise High School near Chico, California, more than 100 members of the football team lost their homes. Only 3 of these young men did not. Joining me now, Paradise High School football coach Rick Prinz and some of his players, Trevor Thurman, Caleb Nelson, and Dylan Blood. Welcome to all of you, and I'm sorry for what you all are going through at this time. Coach, let me start with you. That morning, you thought it was going to be a fairly normal day, right? What happened?
Went to school. It was a normal day. Had my normal routine. Went and got coffee with my guy I work with. Looked up and saw this huge amount of smoke in the air. We're kind of used to fires, so we didn't think anything of it. We heard there was a fire in the canyon. and we went back in, and in 15 minutes they canceled school. So I just hung around school helping out because the fire is on the east side of town. I didn't think there would be any rush for me to get out. I live on the west side of town. And after about 45 minutes, I was standing outside, and propane tanks started blowing up, and cars were blowing up, and big embers of smoke, were falling onto the campus. And I thought, I better get out of here. I have my grandson at home. He's newborn with my son and his girlfriend, and I wanted to get them out. When I left school and saw what was going on, I just screamed home, got them out, and was so relieved that I almost sat on the couch and relaxed. But then I jumped in my old truck and drove it out.
Yeah.
And in the evacuation, I didn't have any information. I had no idea what was going on until I saw the flames that were driving through, and you probably have video of that. Yeah, but it was it was incredible. I've never seen anything like it, and how fast the fire moved is just hard to describe.
Dylan, what's it like for you and all the players that so many of you, almost all of you, lost your homes in this fire?
It's just hard, you know. It just happened so fast. Like, one day we were just practicing to go to the playoff game. We were expecting a section title, and then next thing you know, our season's just over, just like that. So you just kind of can't take anything for granted.
Caleb, you know, what are your thoughts on that day and how the team, tell me how the team is pulling together, because I'm sure you guys are very close and you practice together every day, and now the devastation is just unbelievable.
The devastation's pretty hard. It's been really hard for most of us, but most of us are keeping our heads up, and we haven't got to see our teammates too often, but when we do, it's just like nothing ever happened. Like we're just sitting there, like having fun, sitting by the sidelines is what it feels like, but I know it's never gonna be the same again. I think we need a little bit more time for it to like fully hit us and realize everything's over, or everything we tried, everything we worked so hard for is over.
Trevor, I understand that the 49ers brought you guys to a game, and at least at that point you had a minute to kind of forget about everything, at least just for a little while, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, it was so amazing. They were so generous and just so kind. Every one of the players, they were all so kind, and they all loved to see us, and they were so happy that we made it out alive, and that they had the pleasure to come host us there at their stadium. Me and my buddy got to stand next to Joe Staley, and he was like a mountain of a man, and he was just so kind. And I mean, the people there too, the fans of the 49ers were so kind too. Me and that same buddy of mine, Henry Becker, this lady bought us 2 jackets for free, and it was incredible. I've just never been so blessed from a tragedy in my entire life. It was amazing.
Well, we're all going to be thinking about all of you this Thanksgiving, and how lucky we are, and how lucky you all are that you have each other. I know it's a very tough time that you're going through, and we wish you well. And we know you will get through it, and you should know that the nation is thinking about you. We're going to put up some information how people can help. So thank you all for being with us tonight and telling us your story. We really appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You bet. So we're going to put up on the screen how you can give to the people who lost so much in the fire in a moment. It'll also be on Twitter and on our website. Also, coming up next, the woman who sparked the scandal that forever changed American politics, Donna Rice, 31 years after the affair that ended one of the most promising presidential campaigns of that time. She's done a lot. Mary Hart was running for president, had nearly locked down the Democratic nomination to eventually take on George H.W. Bush in the general election. But Hart's presidential dreams and his political career came crashing down over allegations of an extramarital affair. His downfall, the first of many that we have seen since then. My next guest was the woman at the center of that story, and she has decided to step back into the spotlight tonight. Here's first, though, is Jonathan Hunt, our correspondent, with the story from Los Angeles. Good evening, Jonathan.
Good evening, Martha. It could certainly be argued that you can draw a direct line from Gary Hart's alleged affair with Donna Rice through Bill Clinton's with Monica Lewinsky to Donald Trump's denial of an affair with Stormy Daniels and his boasts about grabbing women. If there was ever a bar for the personal behavior of presidential hopefuls, it perhaps began to be lowered when Gary Hart, the Democratic frontrunner in 1987, was photographed late in the evening at his D.C. townhouse with a woman who was not his wife.
I make no excuses. I only wear them.
That woman, Donna Rice, a then 29-year-old model, had apparently met Hart famously on a yacht named Monkey Business. And after photographs of the two together were published in the Miami Herald, Hart was asked whether he had ever committed adultery. His reply: I don't have to answer that. But days later, Hart suspended his campaign, saying he'd, quote, made some mistakes. And while not admitting to an affair, in the immediate aftermath, the discussion was all about Hart's behavior. As Time magazine memorably put it, quote, he denied there was anything improper about his friendship with Donna Rice, even though it is far from customary for 50-year-old men to spend weekends away from their wives hanging out with comely actresses who have appeared on Miami Vice. Since then, the actions of the Miami Herald in staging the initial stakeout to capture photos of Hart and Rice have been questioned, while the media coverage of the sex lives of politicians has become ever more intense.
Monica, hold on a second. Hey, don't touch her.
Hey, pal, get your arms off her. Now, a decade after Donna Rice found herself the center of the media maelstrom, that, of course, was Monica Lewinsky going through much the same experience, magnified still further by the existence of multiple 24-hour news channels. And, Martha, it does seem fair to ask, without Gary Hart, without Donna Rice, without the media beginning then to make public the private peccadillos of politicians, without those indiscretions, affairs, abuses becoming part of our daily conversation, without the public lowering of the moral bar, could there even have been a President Clinton? Would there be a President Trump? Martha?
Jonathan, thank you very much. Here with me now, Donna Rice Hughes, who has spent many years out of the spotlight following that scandal and rebuilding and channeling her focus into advocating for internet safety and her nonprofit organization, Enough is Enough. And she has spoken with us here in the past about that. And then this movie comes out. Donna, welcome. Thank you very much for being here tonight. And suddenly you're back in the spotlight, and you say that you are ready to talk more about it than you did in the past. What is it you want people to understand and know?
Well, I've actually been out a lot over the past 25 years fighting to protect kids on the internet. And it's really interesting, after 7 years underground, after the scandal happened, after I was really front and center for 15 months, when my name was released to the media by the Hart campaign. But then back on the horse that threw me in 1994 to help launch the internet safety movement. But I'm very grateful that the director of this film actually got in touch with me as they were filming The Front Runner. And he did assure me that the character, my character, which is so strange to say that, would be treated with sympathy and compassion, and I think he did a good job with that.
You know, I mean, it was sort of, like a bimbo story, right? And you graduated magna cum laude, I believe, or summa cum laude. Magna cum laude from USC. You were a pharmaceutical sales rep. You had done some modeling, but it was all bikinis and, all of that. That's right from the beginning. How did it feel to, before that, nobody touched these things, right? JFK? It was never in the mainstream media, but suddenly with this story, it all changed.
Well, it was devastating for me and devastating for my family. And I felt like I didn't have any rights. I all of a sudden became a public figure. And the trauma for me really was just beginning as this film ends, when, like I said, my name was released to the media and I was pushed out there in this first time feeding frenzy, and there was blood in the water, and it was mine, and it lasted for about 15 months. But really, by the grace of God, I returned back to my Christian faith and decided to take the high road. and went underground, all those 7 years. And little did I know, I would actually be using the pain of my own sexual exploitation and abuse and even a date rape when I was 22 years old, and be fighting to protect the dignity and safety of children and young women now in the digital world. Because like one of your previous guests just said, even, rape on campuses and violence against women is at an all-time high. And in fact, Martha, 2 years ago, right before the election, we actually issued the first ever children's internet safety presidential pledge. And we went to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and we asked them to sign it. Trump signed it, Hillary Clinton sent a letter of support, and to make sure to defend and protect children from sexual exploitation in the digital world by enforcing the existing federal laws. So now we've got a first-time president, or a president for the first time in history that's agreed to do that. And now we're looking at a new AG appointment, and we have got to get the obscenity laws enforced. They have not been enforced since John Ashcroft.
It's interesting. I mean, you made some very interesting choices with how to use the notoriety that you had during that and try to turn it into something good. It's a fascinating story. And you took the high road and stayed quiet for so many years. And Donna Rice Hughes, it's good to see you tonight.
Thanks, Martha.
Thank you. We're going to check out the movie. Looks very interesting. Thanks. Good to have you back.
Thanks.
Take care.
All right.
So coming up next, a troubled veteran sends a tweet saying that he is on the verge of ending his life. And that was when actor James Woods stepped in with a powerful message for support for him. This story strikes a nerve with our friend Karl Rove, who has a similar story that very few people know. It is deeply personal, and he shares it with us tonight.